All right. So up until this point, we were talking about everything we were talking about was about sales, making offers, and those are all cash offers that we're making to people. But what happens when cash doesn't work? Do we just basically say, put our hands up and say, hey, this isn't a deal? No, we don't. So what we do is we also do creative deals. So this is Subto, seller finance, hybrids, partnerships. So the cash is always our first option. It's the easiest, it's the cleanest. But when that doesn't work, we're going to pivot to different strategies. So we'll go through each one of these strategies here. So you have every tool in your toolbox to get a deal done. So why cash doesn't always work? The first offer is always going to be cash because we want to set, it's almost always cash unless we know that the mortgage is too high for a cash offer. So why our cash offer has a ceiling? One, MAO. It has its limits. When a property has low equity, high repairs, or an ARV that doesn't support the math, our cash number falls short and we can't do anything with it. A lot of times, people we talk to, they bought the house in the last 5 years, and there's just not enough equity to offer cash where it will even pay off their mortgage. Heavy repair properties, obviously, the worse condition, the lower the cash offer. Uh, so, it's something that the seller just can't realistically accept. And then the seller just needs more, wants more money, and they're inflexible in their position. So this could be pre-foreclosure, capital gains, just an expectation gap, which I would say is most common. And if we offer cash and they say it's too low, but we have good rapport with them, we can pivot into another strategy. So seller situations that signal a creative deal. So you have pre-foreclosure, they're behind on payments, they need a solution fast, but the cash isn't going to cover their payoff. So subject to in this instance could be a good fit. Next we have they're underwater or they have low equity. The value is close to what they owe, so the cash just won't pencil out. Next, capital gains avoidance. So someone doesn't want to get hit with a big tax bill. So we can structure a deal to help them avoid capital gains. Price gap, they're motivated, they want to sell, but they just need more money. So this is an example where our cash offer is too low, but we can make or create a higher offer using a creative method. And then lastly, let's say they own it free and clear, they don't need cash immediately, they can take it over time. We can structure something where they can get payments every month and turn that into a steady payment stream. So which tool and when? So let's go over the different tools, kind of what their use cases are. So cash offer always first. This is the default on every deal. If the math works, like I said, this is the cleanest and fastest path. Next, we have subject to. So maybe they have a low mortgage rate or they don't have a lot of equity. So this is where we do a subject to and take over their existing mortgage, but we're not formally assuming the loan. So we'll get into this, but the loan will stay in their name. We'll just make payments on it, and then the property will get transferred to us. Next, we have hybrid, which is subject to, and then seller finance as well. So let's say a seller has a little bit more equity, right? They owe 150, but they want 170 on it. We could take over the mortgage for 150, and then that remaining 20 grand in equity, we could give them a lump sum. We could make them payments. We could do like a down payment, like 5K to them, and then 15K we'll just make monthly payments over time. So it's a combination of subject to and then seller finance. So seller finance, the seller acts as the bank now. So seller owns the property free and clear and doesn't need a lot of cash up front. They can basically create a note, which is, hey, I pay you 2 grand a month for 30 years straight, and maybe I give you $10,000 down. Lastly, we have a Novation. So we call this a full service program, but basically it allows us to partner with the seller to be able to still get a deal done. So essentially they'll still own the property, but we'll have an agreement where we come in, we do the rehab, we guarantee them an amount. So we guarantee them, let's say 160, and then we put 40 grand into the property, we sell it for 280, and they get their 160 at close and we get whatever's left over after we do the rehab and sell the property. So let's go over subject to. So this is taking over the existing mortgage. So we take over the seller's mortgage payments without formally assuming the loan. So the seller's relieved because they get to sell the property and we get the property with minimal cash needed to close. So how it works. So the seller's mortgage is going to stay in their name at closing. We take the title to the property via deed. We're going to make monthly mortgage payments going forward. So we'll make those payments directly to the the mortgage company. So there's no bank qualifying. There's no new loan needed because we're basically stepping into the shoes of the seller. What we also do here is we set up a servicing company. So the seller will receive confirmation that the mortgage is being paid each month. There's little to no cash to the seller at closing. We might give them 3 grand, 5 grand, but we're just able to get them out of the property and start making payments immediately. And then the loan gets paid down over time as we hold or sell. Now, what does it solve for the seller? So they get relief from a payment they can't afford. It avoids foreclosure. Let me see here. So going back to how it works, usually when we're taking over a mortgage, not usually, but sometimes the seller they're in pre-foreclosure, so they're maybe 2 months, 3 months behind. So what we'll do is we'll catch up the the missed payments as well. So we put some money in the seller's pocket, but we'll also, let's say they're 8 grand behind, we'll pay that 8 grand to bring the mortgage back current. So yeah, so what it solves for the seller, relief from a payment they can't afford, gets them out of foreclosure, so payments are caught up and continued. There's no need for a full mortgage payoff. They get the quick relief. They don't have to go through a traditional sale. There's no repairs, no agent, no closing uncertainty. Their credit continues to improve as we keep paying, which will be a positive for them, especially if they've fallen behind. And then it also allows them to qualify for a purchase again in the future. So there's a number of benefits to structuring things this way. So when do you use this? Seller has a low interest rate on their mortgage. Property has very little equity, and the cash just won't pencil. So if you talk to someone and you can see that they bought the property in the last 3 to 5 years, typically we're not going to be able to give them a cash offer because they're just not going to have enough equity to support that. We're going to use it. Sellers in pre-foreclosure, behind on payments. Sellers motivated, but the payoff kills a traditional deal. And then the property doesn't have really major issues blocking rental or resale. So we would take over the mortgage and then we put a renter in right away. Or we would do a lease option or wrap or those sorts of things, which I'm not going to get into on this call. So one thing to note is most mortgages technically require a full payoff on transfer. In practice, lenders rarely call the loan if payments are current, and our team will walk through managing this appropriately. So here's a real world example. So property ARV is 240. They have a 185 mortgage balance. Monthly payments 1100 at 3.5%. Our cash offer would have to be $108,000. Obviously, that's not going to cover what they owe, so it's not going to be a good deal for a cash offer. So what we would do is we would take the title, continue to make the $1,100 payments at 3.5%. The mortgage is going to stay in the seller's name, and then we're going to get a servicing company to make those payments directly to, let's say, Chase Bank. And then the seller will get, depending on what we negotiate, 0 to 5,000 in their pocket at closing. And then what we'll do is we'll hold this either as a rental or we'll resell it at ARV. So let's say it only needs 20 grand. We could put 20 grand in and walk away with, 20. So how to explain this to the seller? So you want to keep this in simple terms because if you get very confusing with it, they're going to say no. So what we do here is we take over your mortgage payments directly. The loan's going to stay in your name for now, but we'll handle the payments going forward. You get relief from the payment immediately. You don't have to repair anything, wait for a traditional sale, or worry about the bank. We take the deed, meaning we own the property and are responsible for everything. We just continue paying what's already set up. We also set up a servicing company, so every month you'll receive confirmation that the payment was made, so you're never left wondering. And this is actually a positive for you and your credit since we keep paying, it will continue to build, and then it can help you qualify to buy another home down the road. So a lot of the questions you're going to get are, what if you stop paying? So we can set up the paperwork to deed the property back to you if that ever happens, but we're highly obviously incentivized to keep paying because we'll put money into the property. It's an investment for us as well. So, obviously we need to protect our investment. Does my credit get affected? The credit actually continues to improve since we continue making the payments, the loan stays current and is in good standing. So this is a positive. It helps them qualify to buy another home in the future. And then lastly, can I buy another house? So yes, they can. The loan will show on your credit, but since we have a servicing company in place, it typically shouldn't count against the debt to income ratio. It's essentially looked at as an investment property where you have a renter paying the rent. It will look the same to like a new lender when you're qualifying for a house. So after I believe a year, it comes off their credit or their DTI entirely. All right, seller finance. So this is where the seller acts as the bank. So instead of cash at closing, the seller takes a down payment and monthly payments over time, and then they'll hold a note secured by the property. So we make payments to them like we would to a bank or to a mortgagor, and when we sell or refinance, the remaining balance is paid off. So the terms. All these are obviously negotiable, but for us, typically we target 10% or less on a down payment. If we can do 0%, we will. Lower is better for us as it preserves capital and leaves us money to do any repairs that are needed to the property. Again, interest rate, ideally 0%. Some people will ask for an interest rate, and what we'll tell them is like, hey, what we typically like to do instead of an interest rate is we like to just tack the money onto the back end. So if they want a 7% interest rate and it's a $300,000 purchase, we'll say, hey, how about we do 330, 350, whatever it may be, so we don't have to calculate the interest and the amortization. We'll just pay you the same thing every single month, which effectively is a 0% interest rate. And then monthly payments, this is based on the purchase price, the rate, the term. So it really should align with rental income or exit plan cash flow. So this is where the beauty of seller finance is we can structure this any way that we want. So we can do a 30-year note, 40-year note. We can amortize it over a longer period so the monthly payments are shorter. So there's a number of different ways to factor this or to do this. And then people will ask, well, I want to get my money out. Typically, we'll do a 10-year balloon minimum. So after 10 years, they can get their lump sum, but they wouldn't be able to get it before that. So why the seller benefits? So what they get a monthly income stream, often better than a CD or a savings rate. They can spread capital gains over multiple years, which reduces their annual tax hit. They can earn interest on the note as well. And then they're obviously secured by the property. So if we default, they can reclaim it. Why do we benefit? So we can acquire a property with 10% or less down, which allows us to preserve capital. We don't have to get a bank to help us qualify, which is faster and more flexible. We can customize the terms around the deal, which makes it much more advantageous for us. And then we can agree to a price closer to the seller's expectations because the terms can make it work. So just quick aside about capital gains. So when a seller takes a lump sum, all the capital gains hit in that tax year, which leaves a potentially large tax bill. So with seller finance, these gains are recognized proportionally as payments are received. So each year's tax hit is smaller, which is a compelling reason for sellers or investors to go that route. So one key difference between seller finance and subject to is that seller finance, there is no existing bank mortgage. The seller owns it free and clear, so they are the lender. So here's an example of this. So you have an ARV of 280, there's no mortgage. Our cash offer would be 116. They want 160. Let's say we agree on a 155 purchase. They just can't do the 116. We push and they're like, you know what, I could do 155. So what we would do is 10% down at closing, 15.5. So we would have to make payments of 139.5 or figure out 139.5. So here we have 0% interest. We have a 10-year min, no balloon. So the monthly payment to the seller would just be $1,100 every single month. And they don't have to worry about toilets. They don't have to worry about anything. And we'd make those payments every single month moving forward. So the seller total return is 155, right? They get exactly what they're agreed to, but they just give us the terms that we need to make this deal work. So how do we explain it to the seller? Essentially, instead of going through a bank, you would be the lender. We pay you a down payment today, and then not today, but we pay you a down payment at close and then make monthly payments to you directly, just like a mortgage payment. The reason this works is that you get more than our cash offer. And for a lot of sellers, this actually puts more money in their pocket overall, especially factoring in interest. Be careful here. You're not going to say interest if there's no interest. If you've been thinking about taxes on a big lump sum, this actually helps with that too. Since you receive payments over time, the gain is spread out and the tax hit is smaller each year. So we'd agree on a price, down payment, monthly payment, and a time frame, Everything's flexible. It's about what works for the both of us. And the property is the security. If we ever stop paying, which we have no intention of doing, you would have the right to reclaim it. So we already talked about capital gains, how it works, or how seller finance helps. So basically, when a seller takes a lump sum, all capital gains are recognized in that tax year, which pushes them into a higher tax bracket potentially. With seller finance, they get small payments over time. So each year's tax bill is smaller. And for a seller sitting on a few $100,000 of equity, this can be a huge deal to then save a ton on taxes. All right. So hybrid deal. So this is essentially the two strategies I just talked about combined. So they have a mortgage and they want equity above and beyond the mortgage. So we have to do it together. So we take over the existing mortgage and we pay the seller their equity over time. Part one handles the bank, part two handles the seller's equity. So as we discussed in previous slides, part one, sub two, we take over the existing loan and continue making payments. The loan stays in the seller's name. There's no bank qualifying for us. The servicing company confirms payments to the seller every month, and the seller is relieved of the mortgage payment obligation. Now, part two is the seller's equity is paid in monthly installments over time or a lump sum, depending on what the amount is. The seller will earn interest on that amount that we owe them potentially, right? It just depends how we structure it. Terms, rate, payment term are all negotiated, and seller gets their equity structured over time, not all at once. So why the hybrid's powerful? So one, this solves the payment problem. It eliminates the mortgage burden immediately. It pays the seller what they deserve or what they feel they deserve. There's minimal cash for us, and then it's flexible on both sides. So here's how this works. Property ARV is 260. They have a low mortgage balance of 40,000 at 3.8. Their monthly mortgage payment is 620. Their equity is 220. Our cash offer would be 112,000. The seller wants 140 net. So what we could do is we take over the 40 mortgage, continue the 620, and then we pay. This isn't okay. So they want net, but we owe the seller 100K in equity. So the seller payment is 1440 at 5.5 for 7 years, right? So we pay 620 to the bank, and then 1440 is what we pay to the seller. So it'd be a $2,000 payment, and we'd refinance or sell at year 7. Now, again, we could structure this a million different ways, but for this example, this is how it's structured. So how do we explain it to the seller? What we can do here is actually a two-part solution. The first part is we take over your mortgage, so those 620 payments are off your plate immediately. The second part is we pay you your equity separately, directly from us to you, not from the bank, in monthly installments over time with interest. Again, we don't want to do interest, but if we need to, we will. So you'd be getting two payments working in your favor. The mortgage gets paid down, and we're paying you your equity. So you just get it spread over time instead of all at once. We also set up a servicing company so you know every month that the mortgage is being taken care of, and you'll have visibility and peace of mind. Does that make sense as a structure? The idea is we handle the complexity and you walk away with what you're looking for, just structured in a way that works for both of us. So why it worked for the seller. So this actually isn't correct, this 140K total. So they're not getting 140 net, right? They're getting 100K net because we're taking over the 40 if we give them the 140, and they get immediate relief from the 620, and then they get equity paid with interest potentially. For us, we acquire a $260,000 ARV asset with minimal cash in. So we're going to, it looks like we're not giving them a down payment for their 100K. So all we're doing is we're taking over 2,000 a month payments moving forward. And then the carrying costs are going to be covered by ideally the rental income. So if we were paying 2,000, we'd probably want rental income to be 2,600 to 2,800 bucks. And then at year 7, we would either refinance it or we'd sell it. Lastly, we have partnership / novation. So we call this full service program. Instead of us buying at a discount or even buying at all, we enter a partnership agreement with the seller. So we manage everything: renovations, marketing, buyers, negotiations, closing costs. The seller agrees on a net price to walk away with, and then we keep everything above that number. So how does it work? We agree on a net price the seller walks away with. We enter a partnership agreement, not a purchase agreement. So we'll do repairs to the property, staging, marketing, showings. We'll coordinate realtors, inspectors, appraisers. We find the right buyer, as is through full renovation, depending on the type of buyer that wants to purchase it. Seller gets their net at closing, and then we keep the rest. So this takes a little bit longer. This might take 60 to 90 days versus like 21 to 24 days for cash. So what the seller gets, they get closer to their asking price than any cash offer. They don't have to do any repairs. They don't have to pay any closing costs. There's no stress of showings, negotiations, contractors. There's professional management of the entire sale. We'll access multiple buyer types. We absorb all the risk, and if it doesn't sell, this says if it doesn't sell, we don't get paid. But also, if it doesn't sell, they don't get paid. So that's a risk. But it will sell. But we're taking on the risk of like we're hoping to make this much profit, and if we don't, uh, then we eat that. So when to use it? There's a price gap that exists, but property has real upside. The seller's motivated but won't accept a deep discount. So one thing I want to mention is we always want to push to try to get our cash offer accepted. These are tools as of like a last resort or a pivot, but we don't want to just go quickly from a cash offer to this if there's still room to negotiate and try to get the deal done for cash because cash is preferred. Uh, Property, when to use it. Property needs work, that would hurt a cash offer. Sellers open to a longer timeline for more money. We have confidence in the ARV and renovation plan. After the cash offer was declined, this is the pivot call. And then the seller values outcome over speed. So here's a quick side-by-side comparison of everything. So you have your cash offer, which is best for, this is all deals. They get the full amount at close. The existing loan gets paid off. Timeline, seller gets full cash now. This is any motivated seller. Subject to, best for like pre-foreclosure, low equity, a really good interest rate. Some of these people have 2.5% interest rates. We want to consider subject to with these people. So they'll get cash at close. Existing loan stays in place. We take it over. Timeline 21 to 30 days. Seller gets relief from payments. Seller profile is behind on payments, can't sell cash, or has a low interest rate. Seller finance, free and clear. They want to avoid capital gains or they want to get a higher amount, and we can do that if we structure it correctly. Cash at close is 10% or less, no loan required. Timeline, 30 to 45 days. It could also be 21 to 30 just because it's an agreement between us and them. So it could be shorter than the 30 to 45. Seller gets their down payment and monthly income. The profile is the seller's equity rich. They need income. So that's seller finance. Next, we have hybrid. So this is both for low mortgage and has equity, or a low interest rate, but they have a lot of equity. We'd want to structure where we take over that low interest rate and then we can pay them over time. So again, 10% or less. Existing loan stays in place. We carry the equity with the seller. Timeline, again, this could be a little bit quicker, but 30 to 45 days. Seller gets equity over time plus relief. And then lastly, we have the partnership, Novation. So that's for if there's a price gap or this is a good flip opportunity, but they just want a little bit too much money. We're not going to give them anything up front, typically. Sometimes we do. We'll give them a small amount. Existing loan isn't relevant. Like it'll stay in their name. And then as soon as we start, we'll make those payments moving forward because that'll be kind of the interest that we pay. Timeline, 60 to 90 days, could be longer depending on the renovation. Next, we have seller gets their asking price. Whatever we tell them they net, and then we take all the other costs. All right, next, rules and common mistakes. Cash is always the first offer. We're never going to lead with creative unless the situation dictates it. The situation that dictates it would be the mortgage balance is just too high. Identify the right structure from the seller situation. Don't force one tool on every deal. We want to be able to explain the concept in plain language. If the seller's confused, the deal will die. We want to get verbal buy-in on the concept before walking through any paperwork. We want to flag any complex creative deals to me or Abel before presenting full terms. And then we want to just make sure that the math works. So common mistakes, using terms like subject to, Subto, that's fine. I don't think that's confusing. Or novation before explaining what they mean in plain language. Jumping to creative deal when a cash offer would have worked. It just adds unnecessary complexity. Not confirming that the seller's mortgage balance and rate before proposing subject to. So this is in the script. We ask about the balance. We ask about the interest rate. We ask about how much is, I believe we asked how much is left on the loan potentially. Uh, Presenting a hybrid when Subto alone would have been cleaner. Over promising on a timeline. Forgetting to confirm the seller has no other liens before structuring any creative deal. So to drill this out, identify the right creative tool, then explain it to the seller in plain language. Don't use jargon, don't use technical terms, and then time yourself. You should be able to explain this in under 90 seconds. So subject to, seller is two payments behind, owes 160 on a 4.2% interest rate, MAO is 105, ARV is 210. Cash can't cover the payoff, they're scared of foreclosure. So which tool? Explain taking over the mortgage in plain language. We take over your mortgage payments. The loan stays in your name, but we handle it from there. You're out from under it immediately. We set up a servicing company so you get confirmation it's paid every month. So you have subject to, seller finance, hybrid, partnership, novation. So you should be able to explain this in layman's terms for each one of these. So what you want to do is you want to drill these out and work on explaining these succinctly. So if you have any questions, let me know. But that's it for this training, and thank you.